All right, let's talk about the GST holiday and the $250 check and more with our Friday panel of journalists covering Parliament Hill. We have Robert Fife, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. So we have the Prime Minister today, again, defending this new plan for a GST holiday and for these $250 checks, saying we're not backing down when it comes to supporting Canadians. On the other hand, we have other parties calling it a vote-buying scheme. We have it being called a temporary tax trick. So, Tonda, let me start with you. When we add it all up, what do you think the political impact is going to be beyond the actual financial impact for Canadians?
I mean, I think that remains to be seen. It may be too far out from an election to actually have an impact. Will it be visible to Canadians? Does it make that much of a difference for many who are most in need? I don't know. But I think it's many things politically. It's an attempt to steal the NDP's thunder and the Conservatives, who have in the past proposed just such a holiday on GST. It's an attempt to show Canadians that they care about cost of living issues, and whether or not they manage to stick handle it through right now. In any event, it's still going to be something that they can poke their opponents with. You know, it frames them as the fighters for Canadians whenever a vote comes. But again, I don't know that that will hold. And I think, though, it also tells us a little bit. Well, something interesting I found is that this is not as progressive a measure as this government has contended to be in the past, nor for the NDP, actually. The fact that the NDP and the Liberals are now sort of all in on taxes, you know, kind of unlike the way they've been portrayed in the past, as a way to spread money, largesse, all around, and not either make it a measure that's means-tested or helping the most poor among us, and taking a big chunk of change, $6 billion, that could go into any of the cares, you know, pharmacare, healthcare, dental care, child care, long-term care, these things, these big programs that those two parties, progressive parties, stood for. That tells me that they're moving off, and they are sort of positioning themselves kind of out-populisting the Conservatives, who are a populist party.
Right. And we've heard others comment saying, look, this money could go to defense, it could go to economic growth, productivity.
It could go to many things.
JD, how do you see how this announcement got rolled out?
Well, it looked like an economic statement, an economic update from the Prime Minister and all that, because it's got fiscal measures that are very important, that will cost a lot of money to the federal treasury. And we still don't have numbers about the actual deficit of last year, the final numbers, and the projected deficit of next year. So this, you know, it looks good now, but I think it may cause some problems later because, as you know, as you mentioned, we've got difficult choices to make in the future in terms of defense spending, border security, making sure that we are in sync with what Washington will want us to do so that we are still, you know, considered a solid ally. And so it may limit the choices we make in the future because $6 billion in what? 3 months? That's a lot of money.
2 months.
Yeah, and we're hearing criticism today from another American member of Congress about Canada and its spending and its NATO contributions. So, Bob, let me turn to you on this because I want to talk about how this goes against the Conservative message on taxes, on the cost of living. Do you think it's going to be an effective move for the Liberals to try and bridge some of that gap they're facing when it comes to affordability?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, this is a very expensive gimmick by a government in an electoral deficit that doesn't give a hoot about the fiscal deficit. Because when you had the Conservatives, when they brought in the promise to take the GST off of new homes, they actually said it was going to cost $8 billion, and here's where we're going to make up the money. And they haven't done that with this at all. And I also think it's an extremely unfair gimmick that they put forward. The $250 that we can get in the spring, a family making $300,000 can get that money. That's not, to me, right. Shouldn't this be going to people who are suffering the most with high inflation? The same thing with the GST. And you know, we have a really effective GST rebate program for low-income families. They get quarterly payments to help them offset the cost of the GST and food and clothing and issues like that. Why wouldn't that be targeted to those people? Because they are really the people who are in need, not people who are making $150,000 or more a year. So that's why it's all electoral motivated. They don't really care about poor people. Clearly, with this kind of a measure that they're putting forward, they're looking at a larger voting bloc. And I don't even know if that's going to work because, people may be so fed up with Trudeau, they'll say, give me the money, but I'm still not voting for you.
Well, the timing is interesting, Tonda. 23 days, I think, between this announcement and when the GST holiday would start to get a bill through. So it is interesting how everything is really compressed. A 2-month holiday, this bill has to get through Parliament. And we are, of course, in that dispute, the Conservatives, the ongoing privilege debate and parliamentary business, at least government business, at a standstill.
Well, at the time we're having this conversation right now, we don't know exactly what procedural plan is in place to move this through the House or to break the bigger logjam. The NDP would have us believe that there's a way to suspend the logjam while they support this measure alone. The Liberals, of course, want the logjam broken, and they want to be able to bring in their fiscal economic statement, and they want to be able to table the votes, put the votes before Parliament to move money along to pay for some $21 billion in other programming that they need money for. And I don't see yet how that logjam gets broken. But yeah, they're coming down to a crunch. But right now, they're all holding their cards pretty close to their vest.
There's also some regional inequality in this measure because if the taxes is harmonized, the consumption taxes is harmonized, you get 13 or 14%. If it's not harmonized, like in Quebec, you get only 5% the GST. And the Minister of Finance of Quebec introduced an economic statement yesterday. It was, upswing by the federal announcement, and he said this was a gimmick. He said, unless Ottawa compensates us to offer the same thing, we won't do it. So it's going to be, I think, the source of many controversy to come.
Okay, I want to stay on the issue of Parliament here because we did hear the House Speaker yesterday kind of weigh in on the standoff that's going on, the fact that government business isn't getting through, and the fact that there is government spending, the supplementary estimates that need to be voted on dealt with by December 10th, and he's essentially nudging the parties to find a way out of this impasse. Bob, do you think there is a way out of the impasse at this point before Christmas where there's going to be some kind of resolution to what has really become just a complete blocking?
Yeah, and let's just remember what this filibuster is all about. It's the government refusing to provide over all the documents about a green slush fund that could mean tens of millions of dollars of money that may have gone to people that shouldn't have got that money. And Parliament wants the government to provide those documents unredacted, and they won't do so. The Speaker, I was wondering, and I don't know enough about parliamentary procedure, so I was wondering if the Speaker was signaling that he may try to do something to end the impasse himself, which would be explosive because he's already lost control of the House of Commons. I mean, nobody respects this guy. He's the worst speaker I've seen since John Bosley back in 1986 when Mulroney was around. They had to end up getting rid of him because he wasn't able to have respect or control the House. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, none of us do because we don't know whether the NDP will change their mind or not change their mind. That looks like the only solution unless the Speaker can somehow intervene. And again, I don't know enough about parliamentary procedure to know whether he can do it.
Okay, well, one thing we do know is that we are down a minister in the federal cabinet, Randy Boissonnault, stepping away this week, saying he's going to work to clear the allegations against him. Tonda, how does that departure affect the possibility of what we're thinking in terms of a cabinet shuffle?
Well, it just piles on the reasons for a cabinet shuffle, doesn't it? But I'm told it's not imminent. No. So maybe do they want to sort of give a little bit of breathing room in between now and inauguration? We thought it was going to happen after the U.S. election, but Trump is rolling out his nominees. I don't think it matters that much, in terms of who. None of these people have direct relationships and contacts with any of the people Trump is naming. So I guess the reasons for the cabinet shuffle are obvious. We have 4 ministers not running again. We have 2 who have left since, and 2 other ministers who are doubled up doing double duty with big portfolios. Transport and Treasury Board for Anita Anand is huge, and Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor has Veterans Affairs, now Employment, and Official Languages. So huge files. They have to be spread out, and I would imagine that there's a lot in the Liberal caucus who'd like it sooner than later. But guess what? If he does a cabinet shuffle and picks some of the people who might otherwise criticize him, he lights a fire under those who don't get the job, right? And so expect more criticism to become more vocal about the Prime Minister's ability to stay on.
And one more reason to have a cabinet shuffle is that Alberta, which is a key province in this federation, has no voice now in Canada with the departure of Randy Boissonneau. So
they would have argued they never had a voice.
Probably, but still, I mean, it just shows in my mind, because I heard the same information as Tonda. It was supposed to be after the U.S. election. Now it postponed in December. Now I'm hearing also January. There is a lack of urgency about what Canada and the federal government, as a federal government, should do to be prepared for the arrival of Donald Trump in Washington. We're not seeing anything. And guess what Mr. Doug Ford is doing? He's filling the void by saying we should kick out Mexico out of the free trade deal. So there you go. No urgency here. That's what you get.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for this week at least. Thanks to all 3 of you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.